Hi, everyone. I think we're going to begin. I just want to welcome you to the Universality of Shtisel, brought to you by the Friends of Jordan River Village. I'm Gail Androphy, the Executive Director, and before we get to this exciting program, I want to share a few things. First, I have a few Zoom housekeeping items. We've practiced with toys and stuffed animals and children, but this is really our first live virtual event, so we apologize in advance for any glitches that might arise. And we do want to thank everyone who pre-submitted questions. We'll be using some of them in our question and answer session later, but you can still pose questions now and share your thoughts in the chat box, and we will do our best to respond. You may have noticed that I posted a riddle online. What do Paul Newman from Exodus, Chaim Topol from Fiddler on the Roof, and Ayelet Zurer from Shtisel have in common? And the answer is Jordan River Village. The story started more than 30 years ago when Paul Newman built a life-changing overnight camp in Connecticut for sick children called Hole in the Wall Gang Camp. Then he built another camp and then another. Then with the help of Chaim Topol and the late Murray and Marilyn Grant, they launched Israel's only free overnight camp for all children living with serious illnesses called Jordan River Village. Ayelet was introduced to the village last year. She visited, she fell in love, and it was with great pride that I can now say that she has joined our board. And because of these wonderful people and friends all around the world, since opening only 9 years ago, we've changed the lives of more than 14,000 children in Israel. It has an incredible impact, which doesn't stop at the child. The village strengthens the family, empowers communities, and really does make Israel better. But more about that later. Now, I really would like to welcome our two incredible speakers. Layah Lipsker is a Boston-based Jewish educator and a mother of 6. For 3 decades, she's been sharing Jewish wisdom with engaging text study through the lens of Kabbalah. Her teaching reflects her own journey, growing up in the Hasidic community and then embracing the spirituality-rich Judaism that is also pluralistic, egalitarian, and authentic. She's also a research associate at the Hadassah Brandeis Institute. Layah is passionate about issues related to religion and gender and is the director of the Boston Aguna Task Force, which is an organization focusing on eliminating gender disparity in Jewish divorce practices. Layah also serves as a scholar in residence for spiritual retreats, trips to Israel, and she lectures widely. Ayelet Zurer is one of Israel's most acclaimed actresses. She first garnered the attention of Hollywood when she was cast by Steven Spielberg in the Oscar-nominated film Munich. She's also starred in a number of films, including Vantage Point, Angels and Demons, and Man of Steel. She's been nominated and won numerous awards for her role in Hostages and Nina's Tragedies, Treatment, and Shtisel. Ayelet and her family currently live in Los Angeles. So without further ado, though, let me turn it right over to Layah.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you so much. Let's jump right in because I am so excited to be here with you. Ayelet is the incredibly talented actress who plays in the season 1 of Shtisel, for those of you who are the big Shtisel fans here on Facebook and on Zoom. Ayelet is Elisheva, Akiva's first girlfriend on Shtisel. And I have to tell you, Ayelet, Shtisel is my all-time favorite TV show. I could not be more excited to be on this with you. And I want to jump right in because, you know, I have to tell you something. I grew up in a Hasidic community. Shtisel is so familiar to me. I mean, didn't look like AFJRV, not quite the same level, but, you know, the Yiddish is familiar to me. The family life is familiar to me. And yet I'm always so astounded because so many people love Shtisel who don't speak Yiddish, who know nothing about that kind of religious life, that kind of insular religious life. And my students ask me about it. People who are not Jewish ask me about it all the time. And I'm always amazed. And it just has taken me a while to understand just how universal Shtisel feels to so many people. That almost like when you watch it for a while, the religious sort of background kind of fades. And it's really about family and about people and about kind of that need to be seen. And so it really is, it speaks to me personally, but it really seems to speak to so many people. So I would love to just jump in here. You grew up in Israel. I don't know how much of this was familiar to you, but what was it like playing Elisheva for you? How did you prepare for that?
So it's really, first of all, I'm so glad we're doing it. So, and I wanted to say hi and thank you for everybody who's here. We can't see you, which is a shame, but we feel you. I've received a script of this whole season and sat down on my floor to read. And I was in LA. I think I already shot Men of Steel, so I've been on like big sets, and then this little tiny diamond came along my way, and I read it, and from the first minute I read the whole season, I knew that I wanted to take part of it because of the writing, because I feel that already from the page, the universality and the themes were really, really clear. It was about family, it was about love, it was about muse and art, it was about grief mainly, I feel like. And in a sense, I really understood what Elisheva particularly journey was, because I had just grieved a really close person in my life that just passed away, and I was not able to move on at that stage. And so I traveled to Israel, and the first thing we've done from the airport straight into Mea Shearim, we had the weekend. I landed on a Friday, and we sort of went for a tour. And they gave me some, clothes that I could wear that would be suitable. And the first thought that I had in my mind was that here I am in my 40s, and this is my first time in Mea Shearim. I grew up in Israel. I don't have anybody religious in my family. We're quite secular, and my mom is actually European. She came from Czechoslovakia, and so there's also a little bit of a European sense in my family. And I was walking Mea Shearim and looking at the people there, speaking a language that I didn't know because it wasn't Hebrew. And I felt like I was moving into a different realm, really. It was like a time frame. It was like going to Amish land for me in some ways. Yeah. It was so different from anything that I know. And I remember that one of the first things that really settled in my memory, my emotional sense, was that I was walking with everybody, and a young girl, I think she was probably maybe 16, 17, really pretty blonde girl was walking. She didn't have a wig, so obviously she was young and was not married. And she was walking just towards us. And in my very Israeli way, I assumed that if I would look at her straight in the eyes, she would look back to me and we'll have a nod or something of the, familiarity with something you have when you see people. Because, Israelis are very in your face in some ways. And the first thing she's done was to lower her head, and she passed us in, and she's done it in a very subtle way. She was not even recognizing us. She just moved on like a little shot, like a fairy, she moved. And I took that to Elisheva because I felt that Elisheva actually is very, very different from that for me, because she lost so much that she actually challenges the place she's in, and that's why she ends up in a very different place in the story.
She does. It's really interesting because, there's been so much talk around the Unorthodox series as well, right? And this is so different. I mean, for me, to me, this speaks so much, because the truth is that in the Unorthodox, right, Deborah Feldman leaves. She's like, I can't do this, and she leaves for whatever reason. What's so interesting about Elisheva and others, Akiva, of course, is that they stay, and yet they struggle with sort of their identity and who they are.
But they struggle like we do.
Right.
They struggle in the same way we do.
Exactly.
They would have almost the same struggles as we do, because really, it's not really about religion. There's no faith is not really the main part. It's just I'd say the current where this little boat is sort of floating on. It's really about family and much bigger universal themes, particularly I think for the first season, it's mostly, I feel, grief, because everybody's grieving something. Grieving a marriage that's broken, grieving a father that's left, grieving two husbands that passed away, one after the other in a very mysterious way, and grieving a mother or a wife. So it's something that everybody can relate to in some ways, and also it's unjudgmental. Sometimes where you look into another society and into another way of life, you tend, if you're not familiar with it or you didn't have a good experience with it, to judge it in some ways. And because the writers grew up in this environment and they have tremendous love to that environment, they could actually write it with a lot of respect, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it gives them a window into a world without the judgment. And I think people do walk away, especially I think in Israel, where there's such a divide, right, between the secular and the Haredi. I wonder if this was really a gift to the Israeli public, just in terms of kind of bringing that gap a little bit closer, where people can see, we're all just kind of human beings trying to do the best we can, right? I mean, they're not that different just because they're wearing black hats.
Yeah, I feel that there's a beautiful. I mean, that this is why I love what I do, is because I get the opportunity to step into somebody else's shoes and look through their eyes. I feel like we live in an environment, in a society where we really think that our way is the highway. We don't appreciate because we are lacking the possibility to actually experience other lives, and I think that's the way to enlarge our empathy, our ability to understand deeply on the deeper level other people. And I think that, to me, this show does that. It allows you to look into that life with fondness and empathy.
I think it does that incredibly well. Let's actually take a look at a clip. Let's look at a clip of Ayelet and Akiva. My kids have such a serious crush on Akiva. Oh my God, he is so cute.
I think everybody,
young and old. All right, let's get that clip up, Gail, if we can, and get a little taste of Shtisel here.
Okay.
So this is the date scene, right? The date scene.
The first time she agrees to see him.
חיכית לי, אני מצטערת.
אבל הנה, בת.
די, אתה בטח מחכה כבר 20 דקות?
זה בסדר. באמת, זה בסדר. אני בכלל קראתי פעם באיזשהו ספר שהמילה לחכות, איזשהו משהו שלא יגיע בסוף.
מצחיק, חשבתי שאנחנו מחכים למשיח. באמת חשבתי על זה לא מזמן, שאנשים רוב הזמן מחכים למשהו, לאוטובוס שיגיע, בתור לרופא. מחכים שהקומקום ירתח, מחכים להירדם בלילה, מחכים למישהי בלובי.
ואת?
אני מה?
למה את מחכה?
אני אולי כבר לא מחכה. אני מחכה שישראל יגדל. ויסתדר בחיים.
אבל בשביל עצמך. מחכה למשהו?
לתחיית המתים? אני מבהילה אותך, עקיבא?
לא. את יודעת, יש לי חלום כזה שחוזר על עצמו כמה פעמים. אני רואה מרחוק אישה, היא יושבת על ספסל. לידה יש מזוודה חומה. והיא מחכה.
למי?
לא יודע. זה תמיד מאוד עצוב. וגם מאוד יפה.
היית צריך אתה לאחר, ואז היית רואה אותי מחכה.
נכון. את אומנם בלי מזוודה, אבל זה עדיין היה מאוד יפה.
אולי נעשה את זה באמת.
מה?
נתחיל את הפגישה שלנו מחדש, והפעם אתה תאחר.
פה, עכשיו.
כן?
טוב. בסדר. אז לקום?
כן.
שלום. מתנצל על האיחור.
שטויות. תשמע מה קראתי כאן. ביפן, זוג זקנים הלך לישון עם סדין חשמלי, מצאו אותם אחרי 3 ימים, מפוחמים לגמרי, מחומקים.
You know, the writing, Ayelet, is just so magnificent. And I actually have I've seen these scenes a couple of times because they're so moving to me. And I love the idea of how you talk about waiting. You know, that idea that we kind of spend our lives waiting. We spend our lives planning. You know, you and I talked about this idea that this global pandemic, it kind of like stopped all of that. Right? There's nothing to wait for. There's nothing to plan. It's just kind of the here and now. And it made me think about, it's like almost a religious experience, right? I mean, they are in that world. They don't leave that world. You know, their whole world is within 5-6 blocks. And we have the opposite lives. We're moving, we're going, we're coming. And suddenly it all kind of gets quiet, you know, and there's just the here and now, and maybe like the gratitude bubbles up. So there's such an
definitely. Yes. I agree. I think the writing is superb because first of all, it speaks about so many things at the same time, and we can talk about that. But in response to what you're saying, I feel that the waiting is, you know, probably one of the most modern part of human experience. We wait for our kids to grow, we wait for the bus, we wait to make more money, we wait for our kids to get into a better school, we wait to get a better job or to get ahead in our job, we wait for the trip that we are going to go on, and then at the end of the trip we're waiting to go back home. We spend a lot of time either planning or hoping that the plan will work, believing that the plan will give us safety, and we forget the now. And it's a cliche, you know, it's a Buddhist cliche, let's say. But when you sit down and pray, or when you practice meditation, which is partially what, you know, I don't know if you've done that during the time of COVID.
Absolutely, I think we all have somewhere.
Right? So, you know, I think that when you slow down, you have an ability to look at what you have and not what you're going to have or need, even just what you have. And maybe practice gratitude is the way out of the madness and the pain and the suffering and the control.
Yeah. You know, I think of that when I think of the scenes of Akiva putting on tefillin, you know, that wrapping, that slow wrapping, that taking moments of your day and just sort of throwing that tallis over your head. And I wonder if that's a meditative experience. But what was it like for you, that scene? I mean, it's just, like I said, you can feel the intensity.
So I always wonder what people see in the scene, because I know that in the beginning, if they look at it, they see a love scene. They see 2 people in love deciding to date. and it's charming and sweet, but actually there are about many layers underneath this that actually talk about grief again, because that's the beginning of the show. So basically that's where the beautiful writing is. They set up everything that is going to happen right here in the scene, and if you look at it, if you finish watching the show and you go back to the scene, you will see that actually Elisheva says to him from the start, I have no interest because I have nothing I'm waiting for, so I have no faith in love and I don't want it, so don't count on me. The only thing that I care about is really my son. Then he shows her that there's something he understands about grief, about the lady with the suitcase. It's really about death. And then she decides to take a step into life, and she moves, and she agrees to play the game by playing a game and actually moving from one chair to another and sits down, and then she concludes the perception of love in her mind, because she suffers two losses, that true love cannot exist actually, because it exists only with two people dying, hugging. So it's funny because of the sense of humor of the writers, but at the same time, it's kind of tragic, and everything is set up from the beginning. So even if you subconsciously understand that, you don't see that, because you see the charm and the love and the attraction and the curiosity.
I think they use humor in such an interesting way, right? All throughout the show.
Yes, they always plan something funny and very, very human, very realistic, that we immediately understand. And, and then the rest is poetic and then funny. And they use food a lot as well, and dreams and dead people walking in rooms, or snow in a restaurant in Jerusalem, or, the metaphors always come together with this really thick reality of just, handling your life.
Yeah, and that's that's sort of, they go back and forth, I feel like, because otherwise the show is so intense. I feel like there's a purposeful lightening of it, but then it immediately gets intense again, right? I always think about the grandmother. She's such an amazing character. She died, right, during that first, did she die right after that first?
She passed away, and it's a beautiful story. They didn't know what to do, because they wanted to, she was written for the rest of the show, and the producers didn't know what to do. The writers were they were debating, and then the actress that actually is playing the same role was one of her best friends, and she agreed to play the role just because they were so close. So she knew in her heart how to play it, and she said that if it wasn't her, she would not have taken the job.
Wow. And
yeah.
you know what? It's funny because there are some people who didn't realize it was two people. Sometimes I'd be like, it was a different grandmother, but they sort of took on the same kind of character in such a way that it was almost seamless. It was pretty incredible.
It's seamless because they were really close.
Amazing. Such an interesting story. It's I think about this again. I keep thinking about this moment that we're in, right? This incredible moment that we're in globally, that we're all kind of slowing down, a little bit of a Shtisel moment, I guess I'm calling it. And I'm wondering if the show offers some kind of way of thinking about spirituality outside of religion, right? Now, most Jews are not going to end up looking like that, right? Nobody really is looking for that kind of commitment to Jewish law. But I do think there's kind of a yearning for that kind of community, that sense of Judaism being so important to everybody. There's this sort of everything happening that is familiar, everyone's sort of on the same page. And maybe that kind of faith, not so much in God, but in a future, and in, that gratitude as faith and connection as faith, right? Kind of the Martin Buber, I and thou kind of faith. And I'm wondering if that's part of the appeal of Shtisel. So I know you said that the religion is kind of in the background, and I totally see what you're saying. It's really, really about the human side of it. But I do think that there's something. I think people are a little bit maybe looking or yearning for a little bit more of that kind of communal connection?
I have to say that from people who write to me, let's say in social media and can get to me, and the majority of the people who love the show are Jewish people from across the world. But I have to say that it's not just, you know, Jewish people who look at it and see themselves and loving it the way that it is. It's actually really universal. And so I'm not sure. I think everybody sees something else different in this. Some people see the love. Some people see the humor. They're very curious about other lives. I do feel that the people who I met, that they were Jews or Jewish or in some ways not necessarily religious, just Jewish. Mainly what they really liked about it was that they were not shown in a bad way. They were not ashamed. I feel it's very odd, but, and maybe I'm taking it, maybe it's extreme, but I do feel that sometimes there's a sense of shame with, you know, people who talk about religion or faith. There's almost like, I don't know if it's still yet a reaction to the Holocaust and, you know, being Jewish and this effect, or maybe it's the politics behind it. But when you see a show like that, and
there's a little bit of a stigma around religion and sort of being a follower, right? Not thinking for yourself. I think that's maybe
whatever that is. Yes. So the ability to see something that is so sweet and funny and charming and humane is sort of like, oh yeah, that's my people, sort of, and it's okay. I also feel that in a sense I've been through this Corona experience, reading a lot about neuroscience. This is something I've been interested for a very, very long time, and the connection to how we respond to reality. And one of the things I've learned was that we have in our brain something we call mirror cells, which were discovered not too long ago. And what they do is they're sit here in the front lobe, and when someone else, let's say if I have a glass of water, while I do that, everybody that watches me, probably in the same room, but also through cameras, are experiencing the same experience unconsciously, meaning there is an activity in their frontal lobe, in their mirror cells, which is how we learn, how we imitate, how we develop language, how we also have empathy. So in a sense, when you have a positive creation like Shtisel going around the world and spreading love, it is actually spreading love physically. So I just have a sense of pride in being a part of it.
Yeah, and and I love the idea that it's not just for Jews and for Jewish, religious people, but for all peoples of religion, right? All people who choose to live communal lives. There's more of an empathy and an understanding of that, and that's really a gift, because there's
also yes, and also that's also you're tied to your family whether you want it or not. You're tied to the concepts of reality you live in whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
You live in a culture just like these people and the family of Shtisel, and you have restrictions of your own, of your culture, of your yes and no, your do's and not do's. So in a sense, this is just you and me.
We all have to navigate our own way in relation to the baggage that we are given, or to the foundations that we're given, good, bad, and otherwise, right? So it's such a human experience. I want to look at another clip, and then I want to take some questions from the audience. But this next clip really resonates with me. It's about well, let's play it. Let's play it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Let's put up that second clip. Kind of, I guess, the moment where Elisheva says no. I guess afterwards she says yes, but this is her first no.
That's the real no.
The real no. Okay.
That's the real no.
קצת בקלות?
כן. אפשר להיכנס?
כן, בטח, כן. רק תשאיר את הדלת פתוחה? את האמת, אני לא יודעת למה הסכמתי שתבוא.
אני שמח שהסכמת.
כן, אבל אתה כבר עשית את ההחלטה שלך.
אני יכול לבטל הכל ברגע. רק תגידי לי שזה מה שאת רוצה שאני אעשה.
אני בטוחה שהיא בחורה מתוקה וצעירה כמוך.
זה לא חשוב. תגידי לי רק דבר אחד. אם אני אבטל את הכל, אנחנו נהיה יחד?
אל תבטל. אני לא יכולה, אני מצטערת.
בטח שאת יכולה.
אני לא רוצה.
אבל למה?
תסתכל על השיער האמיתי שלי. אתה רואה? הוא מלבין פה. כאן. כאן. אתה רואה?
כן, אני רואה.
אז אתה מבין? אני מצטערת. אני לא יכולה. אתה כל כך צעיר. אתה מסתכל עליי מהעיניים התמימות שלך. ואתה שבוי באיזה דמיון לגביי, ואתה לא רואה אותי באמת.
אני כן רואה אותך. כל כך יפה.
אתה רואה מישהי יפה, מישהי תמימה. כמו מי שאולי פעם הייתי. אני לא יכולה, קיבה. אני מצטערת. אין לי כוח.
כוח למה?
אין לי כוח להתחיל הכל מחדש. אין לי כוח לאהבה, לחתונה, לבית, לרהיטים, עוד משפחה, עוד ילדים, עוד חיים. אין לי כוח. אין לי כוח. אני רוצה שתחזור לירושלים ותתחתן עם הכלה שלך ותשכח ממני.
אם זה מה שאת רוצה, זה מה שאני אעשה. נסעת לירושלים?
כן.
תבוא איתי יחד.
לא, לא תחכה לי. אני אשאר פה קצת.
להתראות.
להתראות, קיבה.
There's so much in that scene. There's just so much we could talk about. You know what? I had forgotten about the open and closed doors. One thing that really was striking for me, and I have so many Hasidic relatives, was that I could say to someone, you can watch the show. There is not one scene where anybody touches anybody. The fact that you can have such an incredibly intensely emotional 3 seasons and have it be completely modest. I mean, it really kind of opens up a conversation about how much we need of the kind of TV that we have today, right? How much of a story you can tell without anybody touching anybody. So much intensity, and there's really, right? There's just complete observance of their custom throughout those 2 seasons. That was very moving. But the taking off of the wig, I mean, such vulnerability, right? As someone who you know, who wears a wig, who wore a wig, this is something that women do, and men wear the strimals, right? This is the external kind of way that we walk through the world, and to rip it off like that. I mean, yeah. How is this scene for you?
On an emotional level, this for me was one of the leading moments where I aim at. I don't know if most people have that when they act, but when I read a script, I have 1 or 2 scenes that I choose. These are the highlights, and I have to sort of rise to them slowly. And all the choices always lead to them, everything that I do. So going backward in the work, the choosing of the wig was really important, because it had to be a moment where you take off the wig and you see not a different woman. And so sitting down in a store where we had to choose a wig was a very interesting experience for me, because not only that I had to choose someone else to look like someone else for a character, I also had to make sure that it feels like not me because of that aspect. And so we were trying colors and reds and, you know, obviously blondes, because they have every single scene and color. And we tried this length and that length. And it took a really long time until we found that specific wig where I felt like, oh, that feels different. That doesn't feel like myself at all. And also something about the wig made me look a tiny bit younger, I felt, because of the cut. And I felt like Elisheva puts a layer outside, an outside layer of what she would want to look, or how she would want to be perceived. But inside of her, she looks very different to herself. And it takes a lot of courage to actually, you know, lift this thing off and allow yourself to look at yourself the way that you really are, not only a man that you love and adore, and maybe if you had enough courage or life force to be with, you would maybe choose to be with him. But she doesn't, you know. And
no, she's so clear. She says, I don't have it in me.
She says so many times the word koach, which is force, life force. I don't have the life force. I don't have the life force. And that, to me, is the essence of mourning, you know?
Of grief.
Of grief, yes. Because grief at the essence of it is that it draws all the energy out of you. It takes away your appreciation of life, not consciously even. I think it's subconsciously. I think you are pulled into a different place. If you're really, really close, and I don't know if you lost someone really, really, really close to you, it takes a long time to heal, and then you think you healed. And then you realize that's kind of what happened to me during COVID, where I was like, I really have to let go. Like the idea of memory, letting go of the person, is almost like saying, if I let them go, they'll go. They'll really go. If the memory will go. Yeah. So there's many, many layers. So I feel like here for Elisheva and in myself, in playing her, there's a parallel, specifically in the time that it was shot. Where I could, really understand where she was. And it's actually really tough, you know.
It made me think a little bit also, not just of grief, but of depression, right?
Yes.
You get into that place where you do what you have to do, but everything else, especially passion, you just can't access it.
Yeah. And I feel that I feel that it's a choice. I feel that choosing happiness is actually a choice. It's a choice, and then you have to work at it. You really have to do your best trying to pull yourself up out of whatever that space is. And Elisheva can't, not at this point in her life. And actually, the beautiful thing about what she says here, and this is one step ahead in the writing, is that she says later on, she says, okay, I'm okay with trying to be together, but with no expectations, no future plans.
Indefinite engagement, I think, right?
Yes, and which comes back to the planning and you feeling safe when you have a plan and you know what you want to do and you wait for something and it happens. It's the essence of the human experience, right? But Elisheva is very, very different, and she doesn't have that at all.
And it's funny because Akiva seems to go along with that plan, right? And then, of course, the father, what's his name? Shtisel. What's his first name?
With the actor?
Yeah, no, the actor. No, the actual in the show, whatever. Anyway, he stops it in the end, right? And he speaks to her, and then Akiva seems to forgive him for that. And I found that to be really fascinating. That's in season 2, but I kind of thought that was going to be the end for them.
Yes, wherein there were discussions about possibly maybe coming back or not coming back for a season. The way I felt about it was that Elisheva is also representing a muse. The young painter needs a muse to be painting someone, and you can't maintain your muse. You can't. It has to stay away and never really within reach, because then you stop to create.
Interesting.
So in a sense, Elisheva and then his next love affairs he'll never be able to reach them because he chose them wisely. They always stay muses, they never really attainable.
So I guess that means you are not coming back for season 3.
Looks like I'm not.
But they are in the middle of season 3, right?
Well, yeah, I think they're actually, if they're not shooting now, they're rehearsing for it, and I don't know what the situation is in Israel right now with the productions. It's kind of complicated, same as here, although people were going back to work, but I'm not sure if it's going to sustain itself.
But we will get a 3rd season.
Yes,
you're promising us.
There will be a 3rd beautiful season. Yes.
All right. All right, let's open up and take some questions from our audience. We asked for some questions in advance, and I know there are 3 people on hold here to ask their questions. Let's start with Joanne. Joanne, if you can, I guess, unmute yourself, or if someone can unmute you. I know you have a question for Ayelet.
Hi.
Hi.
You're terrific, first of all. And so my question is, do you believe that Shtisel as a show has impacted people's ability to relate to people who are not like themselves, particularly in Israel? And is there anything that has impacted you personally while doing the show?
That's a great question. Thank you. Me personally on a personal level, I am a person who leans into faith, but not specifically Judaism in per se. I light Shabbat candles because I made a promise, and I do that every shishi Friday night. But other than that, I don't have many personal connections to Orthodox, and I think I'm really similar to an average Israeli in that sense. I feel like in the last few years has been a tremendous amount of divide, particularly in Israel, but divide all across the world, just divide of ideas. And maybe it's the media, maybe it's the extreme experiences that we are going through, and maybe anger and blame that we feel like we need to. So you know, in a sense, I feel like that the fact that there are shows like that in Israel are actually very important because they allow people to see themselves through the eyes of the camera and the storytelling. For me personally, nothing really changed aside from the fact that I sort of became someone who speaks about it, and so I have to give thought about just that. You know, if you to be an actor that playing a show and then you've been asked about that, then you suddenly have to really, and you have to come up with answers, and so that is really interesting. And I feel like maybe I'm a little more open-minded and cautious and appreciative of other people's experiences, where if I didn't have that experience, maybe I wouldn't have had that.
I mean, you're also raising, I'm just thinking you're raising a teenager, right? I mean, I think that also kind of lends itself to asking these kinds of spiritual questions. I think, you know, that might just have come at this time anyway, right? How old is he?
My son is 15. So right now we are in a place where everything that I say, he thinks the other way. So if we ever had the same path and we agreed on spiritual things, and now we have more of conversation about physics, the physics aspect of faith, which I find to be interesting because I feel like some people have that language and some people have that language, but they're really describing the same thing, only with different tools. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think the word God trips us all up. We should just lose that word and we'd all be a lot better off. All right, let's bring in another question here. Ariella has a question as well for you, Ayelet. Ariella, are you there?
Did we lose Ariella?
All right, we got her. Got to unmute yourself. Perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you both so much for doing this. Ayelet, thank you for doing this for Jordan River Village, and you've made me want to rewatch the entire show again now. So another pandemic activity for me. This conversation has been fascinating about the universality of Shtisel, but both of you have already mentioned Unorthodox, and obviously Fauda is a very popular show as well, and Israel has just sold this other thriller, Tehran, to Apple TV. So there's sort of this explosion of Israeli and Jewish content that's across multiple streaming platforms now, and gaining obviously not just a Jewish audience, but a much wider audience as well. I'm shocked by how many of my non-Jewish friends watched Unorthodox in the last couple of months. So I'm curious if you have any sort of insights or thoughts about what these very different, but sort of coming from the same place, shows is resonating right now with such a broad audience.
Wow, that's a big question. Yes, listen, it's first of all, it's amazing. From the time I started, I came here to LA because of Munich. And when we shot Munich, In Treatment was sold to HBO, and then it was sold all over the world, but it was not shown in Hebrew, because that was like, oh no, that's not, no, we can't do that. That's too much for us. And every place in the world actually had their own adaptation to it. And it was pretty successful, I think in 60s countries, 16 or 60, some really phenomenal number. And within the year, Fauda has been sold in other shows, and Tehran was just sold, and a show that I just finished filming called Losing Alice was sold to Apple. It was just announced. And for example, Losing Alice is shot in Hebrew and will be seen on Apple in Hebrew, which is a huge difference from 10 years ago, where before the streamers came on and allowed people a little bit of flexibility in how they see other languages and cultures. We had a movie that won an Oscar that came from Korea. We are becoming a little more flexible, I think, in accepting other cultures and other languages, and I think it's a really good thing culturally and universally, and particularly why why is a good question. I think maybe just really good talents that don't have a lot of outlets, and so they train on a small base, and then they create something that's really unique because they have to keep budget really low because they don't have the 2 million per episodes. It's not
Right.
Games of Thrones, and then so the story has to be really tight and very specific, and the writing has to be really good because of that, and it's cheaper, so it's not as expensive to buy, and it's just well done. So altogether, it becomes a really good commodity.
Good package. I'm wondering, actually, now that you're mentioning this, I'm wondering if you see a difference when you look at it and you see the English subtitles, right? So because I know Hebrew, sometimes I'm like, oh, that was a terrible translation, right? They missed that. And because I know Yiddish, sometimes I'm like, oh, they messed that up so badly. So it makes me wonder when I watch something in Spanish, what I'm missing.
Well, because I'm familiar a little bit with the dub world, I can tell you that this is an art by itself. Dubbing and translation you need to have a person who not only knows the language, but also a good writer, because you have to find something that resonates with the culture you are dubbing or writing towards. And and in some ways, you sometimes have to lose a joke in order to gain speed. I mean, people can't spend the whole time reading something. They want to watch the actors on screen as well. So it can be long, or it has to be precise. It's really complicated and actually quite challenging.
Like an art all by itself.
It does. It is. Yeah.
Someone is mentioning that Losing Alice is an amazing show. I know you star in that, and that's coming on to Apple TV. I can't wait to see that. All right, we have one last question that we had from before, and that is from Iran. So if Iran is on, we'll get. I think we have time for another last question here. Iran.
Fine. Oh, there we are.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Shalom, Ayelet.
Hi.
Hi. So you're Israeli, you grew up there, and now you're raising a teenager son in LA. And I'm just wondering how you cope with these two so different worlds.
The two worlds become you at some point. You just need to accept it. I feel like the frog that was a frog, and the fish or the lizard that walked on the shore for the first time and then grew legs and then became an amphibian. Within time, I understand the culture I'm in. It's actually different from where I came from. And then going back always takes a bit of a time to adjust as well. It's just, it is what it is, you know. I appreciate, I feel like there's always two sides to the coin, and you can look at the challenging part and give it weight, or you can always look at the bright side and you know, appreciate what you have. And I feel like I'm really lucky to be able to film in Israel and make these amazing shows and come here and do work here and enjoy those, you know, those two very different places in one lifetime, because sometimes there are people just like the people in Shtisel's world who are, you know, living in a very small place and never traveled past their town. So I feel very lucky in that sense. And I'm feeling always very, very lucky that I can go back to Israel and do my work there, just like what I do with the Jordan Village, because I feel like this is a great opportunity for me to be engaged in another place in a different way other than my career.
How much time are you spending in Israel? I mean, are you splitting your time, or is it more?
No, we usually, so through the years now is, you know, with COVID, it's really different, but usually all summer times I'm there. And if I work and film, we usually have most time with the family there. When we shot, let's say, Losing Alice, so we spent like 2 weeks. I was working 2 weeks by myself, and the family came for a month, and I stayed, and then they came back here. So it's always like moving parts. It's complicated.
I'm sure.
Very.
I'm sure.
But I enjoy it. You know, this became it became my life, and I've been in marvelous places filming sometimes. So it's a blessing. It's a challenge and a blessing.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Jordan River Village? Because it's just, yeah, some of us don't know as much about it. I'd love to hear how you got involved and what your take is on it.
So my friend Matt, who was working with the village a long time ago, and again now, told me about the place. And when I was in Israel, I decided to go see it, and I went, and I was overwhelmed by that place, because first of all, what I can say is that this is a place that takes kids with, you know, how should I put it in the right words? Kids who are living with serious medical conditions, like, I don't know, cancer, epilepsy, cystic fibrosis, all kinds of disabilities. Some we see, some we don't. And they come there for a camp, and either for a whole week or weekends with their families, depending on their ability to, and it's all for free. And when I went there, the first thing that that happened to me when I walked in is a group of kids, sort of in a pre-army year, the service year they call it, wearing the t-shirts of the place, accepting me and the friend that I came with cheers and clapping, and just the spirit behind it was so overwhelming. And I asked if the balloons and all that cheer is for me, and they said, no, it's actually for each and every kid. And let me tell you, when I walked through the wave of the cheering, I was crying because it was so moving. The love that they give is something I've never experienced before. And I thought, first of all, if these kids give so much, I wonder how the kids who are stuck at home and weren't able to, let's say, leave the house or be in camp or an afternoon program, just like, you know, some of us might feel now, because we haven't been out much. So that's their lives, you know. And so then we walked through the village, and I saw the swimming pool where you can go in with the wheels, sorry, I forgot the word. The
wheelchair.
Wheelchair, sorry, the wheelchair, and you know, zip line where you can do that with a wheelchair, and things that are, you know, so thoughtful. And then to conclude this, and there's a hospital on the camp that looks like, you know, like a beautiful playroom, really, but it's a hospital with volunteers from the country, people who really care. And then it concluded in the kitchen, where we had this amazing meal that they have on a daily basis. And just the way that the kitchen was really sealed the deal for me, because the person who I lost in the beginning of the show, the conversation I told you about, she was someone who opened her house to a lot of people to feed. And so, and her kitchen was always flawless. And I always felt like the language of food is a language of love that I understand because of that. But the kitchen was so flawless and the food was amazing. And I felt like this is a place that I feel I can support 100% without any doubts, you know? So that's
Beautiful.
why we're here.
Beautiful. I'd love to cut to a clip of the village right now. Gail, do we have one that we are going to end with today?
Oh, great.
With your support, the Jordan River Village will continue to be a beacon of hope for children and families living through traumatic illness by fostering lasting friendships, courage, and optimism.
I'm back. I'm so impressed, Layah and Ayelet. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. You know, it's amazing that we can all connect virtually, and I hope that everyone feels, you know, as enlightened and inspired as I do right now. I'm also happy that Ayelet's been able to introduce so many new people to the village. It's a really wonderful organization, and the Friends organization here in the US works with donors and organizations, federations, foundations, and board members from Boston and Florida, California, Connecticut, DC, New York, Texas, and so many other places. And as our new friend, we really would hope that you'd consider learning more about what we do, visiting our website, which we'll put in the chat, following us on Facebook, or even our new Instagram account, which we'll put all the URLs in the chat. Maybe even when the world opens up again, to visit us in Israel and consider making a tax-deductible donation to support the really incredible life-changing camp experience. And in fact, right now I'm thrilled to announce that all donations will be matched by a very generous donor, dollar for dollar, which means that each gift that you make has double the impact. And, you know, I always like to end these events by saying something or telling a story about Paul Newman. And my favorite is really that he used to say, I have heard it said that you can leave camp, but the camp never really leaves you. And that's what Jordan River Village does for our campers. We create hope and we build dreams, and we really do help people see beyond their differences. And I hope that that's what we were able to do for you tonight. If you have any questions or any comments, you can always reach us, info@afjrv.org, or visit our website, or you can see us, as I said before, on Facebook or Instagram. And thank you again for joining, and thank you to Ayelet and to Layah and to all of our friends who have joined us on Zoom and on Facebook. Hope to see you again soon.